90 days. Every single dollar. Not an approximation. Not a rough estimate. Every purchase. Every transfer. Every subscription charge. Every cash withdrawal. Every transaction of any kind tracked, categorized, and recorded. I started this experiment not because I thought I had a spending problem. I started it because I genuinely didn't know where my money was going. I had a decent income. I wasn't accumulating debt, but I also wasn't building wealth at the rate I thought I should be. Something was happening between the paycheck arriving and the investment account growing. Something I couldn't see clearly. 90 days of tracking showed me exactly what that something was. And what it revealed wasn't primarily about the money. It was about me, my patterns, my emotional states, my relationship with discomfort, boredom, stress, and reward. The tracking didn't teach me finance. I already knew finance. It taught me psychology, specifically, my own. And that turned out to be the most expensive information I never had. How I tracked, the methodology. Before the findings, the method. Because the method matters. I used a simple spreadsheet, not an app. A spreadsheet I built myself. Every day, at the end of the day, I opened the spreadsheet and entered every transaction from the day. I categorized each one. I added a column I hadn't seen in any financial tracking system. Emotional state at time of purchase. Not what I bought, why I bought it, what I was feeling. Hungry, bored, stressed, tired, celebrating, anxious, lonely, excited. This column turned out to be the most important one. I also tracked time, not just money. What I spent my non-work hours doing, where my time went alongside where my money went. The combination of money tracking and emotional context tracking over 90 days produced a dataset about myself that I couldn't argue with, couldn't rationalize away, couldn't explain as exceptions. 90 days is enough time to see patterns, real patterns, not anomalies. Finding 1. The Tuesday problem. Week 3 of tracking, I noticed something strange. My highest spending days were not weekends. They were Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I checked, then rechecked, then went back through the data week by week. Tuesday and Wednesday spending was consistently higher than any other day of the week, including Friday and Saturday. The emotional state column explained it. Tuesday and Wednesday were my highest stress workdays. The week had started. The work pressure was real. The weekend was too far away to feel like relief. And the spending on those days was almost entirely discretionary. Food delivery instead of cooking. Coffee shop instead of home coffee. Small purchases that individually seemed inconsequential but aggregated into a pattern. I was spending money to relieve midweek stress. Not occasionally. Every single week. Consistently. The Tuesday and Wednesday spending pattern over 90 days. Approximately $240 monthly. Not on things I valued. On stress relief that worked for approximately 45 minutes, and then required the next purchase. This was not a spending problem. This was a stress management problem that expressed itself as spending, and I would never have seen it without the data. Finding 2. The gap between values and spending. Month 2. I did an exercise I hadn't planned to do. I listed my 5 most important values, the things that actually mattered to me: health, learning, meaningful relationships, creative work, financial independence. Then I looked at where the money actually went over the previous 60 days. The gap between the list and the spending was uncomfortable to look at. Health. I claimed to value it. I was spending $12 monthly on a fitness app and approximately $40 monthly at a gym I visited twice in 60 days. Meanwhile, I was spending approximately $300 monthly on food that had nothing to do with health and often worked against it. Learning. Claimed to value it. I had 3 books I'd bought and not read. 3 courses I'd enrolled in and not completed. The spending on learning materials was real. The actual learning was not. Meaningful relationships. I claimed to value them, but the spending on actual relationship investment activities with people I cared about, experiences shared, was a small fraction of total social spending. Most social spending was on bars and restaurants that were more about routine than connection. Financial independence. I claimed this was a top priority. It was not reflected in the spending at all. The spending was reflecting a different set of values than the ones I said I had. Not because I was lying to myself about my values, because the spending was automatic. It happened without reference to values. The values were in my head, and the spending was in my hands, and the two had almost no relationship. Seeing that gap explicitly was one of the most uncomfortable moments of the 90 days, and one of the most useful. Finding 3. The invisible subscriptions. Month 1, first week. I went through my bank and credit card statements looking for recurring charges. I found 23 distinct recurring subscription charges. 23. I knew about maybe 14 of them. 9 were subscriptions I had either forgotten completely or thought I'd canceled. Total monthly cost of the 9 forgotten subscriptions: $87. $1,044 annually on services I wasn't using and didn't remember purchasing. This is not exceptional. Research on subscription spending consistently shows that people underestimate their subscription count by 30 to 40%. The auto-renewal model is specifically designed to exploit the fact that cancellation requires active effort and renewal requires none. I canceled the 9 forgotten subscriptions the same day. That 1-hour exercise freed $1,044 annually that immediately redirected to investments. Finding 4. The cost of convenience. This finding surprised me most because I thought of myself as someone who cooked regularly. I tracked every food-related expense: groceries, restaurants, delivery, coffee shops, vending machines. Everything. The actual breakdown over 90 days: groceries, approximately $240 monthly; restaurants and delivery, approximately $310 monthly; coffee shops, approximately $80 monthly; total food spending, approximately $630 monthly. For one person, the restaurants and delivery category was the revealing one. I went through every transaction. The restaurants I remembered as choices, the dinners that were social, the lunches that were enjoyable were a small fraction. The majority were convenience transactions. Food ordered because I was tired and didn't want to cook. Coffee bought because making it required 45 extra seconds. Lunch purchased because I hadn't planned. The convenience premium I was paying, approximately $250 monthly, above what the same nutrition would cost if prepared at home. $3,000 annually for the convenience of not making food. Some of that convenience is worth it. The social dinners, the genuinely enjoyed restaurant experiences, those produce value. The autopilot convenience spending, food purchased because planning ahead felt like effort, was not producing value proportional to its cost. Finding 5. Time and money move together. This finding came from the time tracking component. I noticed that my highest spending weeks were also my most time-poor weeks. Weeks with less discretionary time consistently produced more discretionary spending. The relationship was almost perfectly inverse. More free time, less spending. Less free time, more spending. The mechanism: when time is scarce, convenience becomes expensive. Delivery instead of cooking, taxis instead of transit, prepared food instead of planned meals. But the deeper relationship: when I had adequate time for rest and recreation, bought less. The spending was partially filling time as much as buying things. Browsing, purchasing small things, experiencing the small dopamine hit of acquiring something. When time felt full and satisfying, the impulse spending largely disappeared. This told me something important. Some of my spending was not about the things I was buying. It was about what the buying was doing for me in the moment. The stimulation of it, the small decision-making of it, the brief reward of it. That spending is not addressable by budgeting. It's addressable by making non-spending activities more satisfying. What I changed and what happened. After 90 days of data, I made specific changes. The Tuesday-Wednesday problem: I built a specific list of free or very cheap stress relief activities. Walking, a specific playlist, a phone call to someone I hadn't talked to in a while, a workout, reading something I'd been meaning to read. When I felt Tuesday stress, I reached for the list before I reached for delivery or a purchase. Not always successfully, but often enough to reduce the spending pattern by roughly 70%. The values alignment. I canceled the gym membership I wasn't using and redirected the money to one specific health-related spending I actually valued. I blocked time for the learning I said mattered. I scheduled specific time with people I claimed to prioritize. The subscriptions, canceled 9, saved $1,044 annually, redirected to investments. The convenience food, implemented one specific change. Sunday preparation of 3 to 4 base meals. Not elaborate cooking, just enough that weeknight food decisions had a lower effort alternative to delivery. This reduced the convenience food premium from $250 monthly to approximately $70. Savings of approximately $220 monthly, $2,640 annually. Total monthly savings from changes made based on 90 days of tracking, approximately $460, $5,520 annually, redirected to investments. What the tracking actually taught me. The money findings were important, but the real discoveries were psychological. I discovered that I spend when I'm stressed more than when I'm happy. I discovered that my stated values and my actual behavior were significantly misaligned in specific categories. I discovered that most of my spending happened on autopilot without conscious decision. I discovered that convenience was costing me significantly more than I realized because the per transaction cost was small enough to never trigger deliberate evaluation. I discovered that I had forgotten about 9 subscriptions representing over $1,000 annually. None of these are uniquely my problems. Research on consumer behavior consistently shows these patterns across populations, but seeing them in your own data is different from knowing they exist. Generally, you can read about emotional spending without changing anything. When you see your own emotional spending in a 90-day dataset, with emotional state tagged to each transaction, it's harder to dismiss. The data made denial impossible, and impossible to deny data is the most effective driver of behavioral change available. 90 days, every dollar, every emotional state. The money I found, approximately $460 monthly in spending that wasn't producing value proportional to its cost. The psychology I found, stress relief spending, values misalignment, autopilot convenience costs, forgotten subscriptions, time scarcity driven spending. The actual value, not the $460 monthly. The awareness, the specific, undeniable, personal awareness of how my psychology was expressing itself through my spending. That awareness changed how I make decisions. Not perfect, not always, but consistently enough that the financial picture 2 years after the 90-day experiment is meaningfully different. You don't need an app. You don't need a complicated system. You need 90 days, a spreadsheet, and the willingness to add one column that most financial tracking ignores. Not what you bought, why you bought it, what you were feeling when you bought it. That column, filled honestly over 90 days, will tell you more about your financial life than any budget ever could. Because the spending is not the problem. The spending is the symptom, and the 90 days shows you what it's a symptom of.